Hello, Eli. Huge welcome to the show.
Greetings. Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm delighted to have you. Already, I'm feeling this real, as I've already said to you, that just got such a real, like, authentic embodiment of your message. So up until now, I'd only experienced you on Facebook, but everything I've seen you on Facebook is like here right now in front of me. So I'm so glad we're having this
Yes,
conversation.
I appreciate the connection. You wrote me, and it's always amazing and it's always beautiful when other human beings want to connect with you to learn or to see things from a different perspective or to build upon their own perspectives. I don't take any of that for granted. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, really, really such a pleasure. So we are talking about topics that are really dear to my heart, and one way or another are something that are just woven into so much that we do here at Wake in the Wild. But I feel that you've got such, I mean, I guess the topic itself around this kind of unique, authentic expression by its very nature, of course, you're going to have your own version of that. But again, you've got such a strong embodiment of that I'm absolutely thrilled to be able to explore how you've arrived, I guess, firstly at that uncovering of what that is for you, but then also how you're bringing that out as a kind of message to others. And this is what I see you doing all the time, like this very clear, like, activation and articulation of this message of like leadership and authenticity. So what I'd love to do is just start with, like, how did you arrive with this being your passion, your message, and maybe even you'd see it as your mission?
Right. I'm sure there are ways that are just there are reasons that are just simply unconscious to me why or how I arrived at this point. But when you ask that question, what I think about is, my upbringing, my experiences with in my career in school. Um, so I think what's different, one thing that's different about my life path so far is that I didn't do very well in school growing up. So I didn't make the best grades, but I
Mhm.
didn't feel stupid. So it was kind of weird. It's like, my grades say that I'm not very smart, but I feel quite smart. I feel like I understand my surroundings and I understand what's going on. So there's something here that's misaligned. So after
I love that.
experiencing that over and over again, grade after grade after grade, I would barely pass every grade. But after experiencing just the stigma with that comes with that, it sort of became this thing of they don't know what they're talking about. I'm going to go on a journey of self-discovery and I'm going to stand on my own truth. I'm not going to allow other people or institutions define me or define my worth. And I think to answer your question, that's how I found my voice. That's one of the key reasons I found it was to be forced in a circumstance where your back is against the wall and you either have to pick up the torch and represent yourself or allow this world to eat you alive. I decided to stand and pick up the torch and just represent myself.
Mm, wow. I absolutely love that. Why do you feel that you had that clarity of they're wrong? Like, because
Mhm,
so many children probably have very similar experiences, going through school, um, being told that they're the ones that are at fault, are failing, are stupid, in not so many words. But
mhm,
I would say your experience of thinking, hey, it's not me, it's you that's got this wrong. I would
mhm.
say that's the rarity. What do you feel that's in either your kind of, could be nature, could be nurture? Like, why do you feel that you had that clarity?
I honestly couldn't tell you. It could be genetics. It could be, what my ancestors, certain personality traits I picked up from them. It could be a mixture of that. Maybe I saw a movie when I was a kid and I just decided to embody a persona of confidence and certainty, but it was just the right ingredients, whatever it was just the right amount of ingredients where I was able to be put in a circumstance where it's me against the world, or it felt that way at least, and to say, I don't think these people, I don't think what they're saying to me about me is correct. This isn't proper. This isn't correct. I'm just going to get in my own skin. Just as a brief example, one time I made like F's on some report card or something. and I wrote a book in my notebook called Straight F Student, and I said F stands for fabulous, and I made up all these positive words that F stood for. So that was the book that I carried around with me, and that was the sort of certainty that I carried with me, despite
Wow.
making an F on my report card in this class. And yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful. Like, just the difference it would make, for I think children in particular, when they are like sponges, so receptive to the messages that are coming externally.
Mhm.
What you're describing right there is so precious. So what did that look like for you? As you described, you picked up the torch. What
Mhm.
did that look like? So I'm guessing that was a kind of ongoing process. It wasn't a kind of one-time choice.
Right.
What did that look like after school?
Many initiations. Believe it or not, I did go to college for a few years, so I had some experiences in college. Same thing. My brain works in a very specific way, and it's not designed for our educational system, and I'm fine with that. So I later joined the workforce, and I became an entrepreneur out of that at the age of like 2021. So being an entrepreneur, if you don't work, you don't eat. If you don't close deals, you don't eat. So being that I was forced in a position where I had to figure out how I was going to survive, and at that younger age, I was making quite a bit of money. I was doing well for myself for my age at that time. Um, so it just sort of added fuel to the fire of authenticity, sovereignty, originality. It's like, man, I didn't do well in school. I didn't do well in the workforce. I don't fit in any of these spaces, these institutions. And some part of you wants to, but you can't if you don't. So if you can't find a place for you, you have to build a space for you. And I think that's one reason that just fuels me to build my own experiences. I'm not going to allow the illusions of society to be projected on me. I'll project my own illusions.
Mm. Oh my goodness. I just so love that, like, certainty I can feel in you. It's like,
Hmm.
this is how it is. I just love that. What I really notice about you, which for me is a really important aspect of sovereignty, is despite the fact that the way, for example, the school system is set up, um, didn't work for you, despite the fact you were that created these experiences where you were being told things like, you aren't able to do well in this system. It feels as though there wasn't this sense of kind of like being a victim to it.
Hmm.
It was, and you, even the word initiation you used, it's almost like, this is here to create me more powerfully. This is here to um
Hmm.
kind of alchemize me into something even more true.
Hmm.
Um do you feel that that was always present, or is that something you've become more and more like, this isn't a kind of me being a victim to the world and I need to be in reaction, but this is just me actually just becoming more and more of myself? Like, was that always present, or is that something that's become clearer and clearer?
Right. I think it's something that's definitely become clearer and clearer as I've aged. It's something I look back on, and at my age now, I can articulate in that way. But certainly, there were times when your confidence or your self worth would be challenged, and I wouldn't win every battle. Sometimes I would lose a battle. Sometimes I may be convinced of whatever's trying to be projected on me in a negative light, and I have to work through that. So it
Mm.
took a lot of initiations. I didn't pass every initiation the first time. And, sometimes it did get the best of my mind or my spirit or my heart. But you only have one life to live, and everyone has the will to live. Everyone has the will to survive. What's different is my back was so against the wall, I had no choice but to stand on all fours, stand on all twos, and look at it straight in the eye and just proclaim what I felt was true, and what I feel is right. And it's not just a message for me, it's a message for so many people, even people who did excellent in school, because maybe they did excellent, but they didn't choose a life path that really resonates with their heart. So
Mm.
it's a message for everyone, people who are the outliners of society and people who do very well with the systems of society, but may not be internally as balanced as they should be or as happy as they could be, because they fear their own power, their own personal power and personal authenticity. So it's a message for all.
Oh, yes. I love that you've come there, because it's, in some ways, and it might be that this can either be, as you say, some people are designed in a way that can fit really well into our culture. And there's some people, and this is probably how I was, there's places that I really didn't, but there's ways that I could manage to be really successful. But it's so easy to be a victim of your own success, in that it kind of keeps you
Mhm.
trapped in that thing that's not actually aligned. That could be, all sorts of things, a job, a relationship, all kinds of things. And as you say, it's the same message, it's the same invitation, it's the same opportunity for all of us to live a life that is actually really for us, really aligned. One of the things that we spoke about before we started recording was this like deep connection with the divine that you have, that you
Mhm.
are kind of, like, you could say, taking your lead from. I'd love to hear, I guess, when that became something again that you were conscious to, that you really felt this deep sense of being in alignment with, perhaps you could say, a greater power. I'd love to know your journey with that, because there's lots of people who might talk about some of the same kinds of things you're talking about, but be devoid of the spiritual aspect.
Right.
So I'd love to know how that's shown up and, I guess, evolved over the years for you.
Right. Well, as you know, I wrote a book called Spirit Said, and I often write statuses on social media beginning with Spirit Said. And when I say Spirit Said, I'm just revealing a message, a download, or whatever you want to call it, that I feel I've received from Source. I received from Spirit. I'm paying attention to my life. I'm paying attention. I say the word the fields a lot, minding your
Mm,
fields and nurturing your fields and paying attention to your fields, which means addressing the challenges that show up in your life. Those unique challenges, not avoiding those challenges. I don't care how small it is or how big it is. Address those challenges, because that's where your initiations lie. So as I'm living my life and I'm observing what's in my field, and sometimes it may not have something to do with me, it's just in my field, it's something that I'm observing. I can
mm,
decode spiritual messages from that and release it to the collective. Because when you think about a field, imagine like a farm, a big farm, and there's all these crops on this farm. And then there's the neighbor next door who has their farm, and the neighbor next door who has their farm. Whatever's going on in the field likely is going on in all of their farms if they're feeding it similar products. I believe that there is a universal connection between everyone, and there's nothing unique going on in your life that other people are not going through. So when you learn to decode what pops up in your field, you'll learn even better how to express information and transmit information to help people govern and manage the unique challenges in their field. It's just about getting to that fundamental communication style that everyone universally can understand and apply it to their own life.
mm. Yes, I love that. So it feels to me like almost a this isn't really going to completely do justice to it, but almost like a practical application of a deeper knowing that you have.
Mhm. Well, yeah, it's a little bit of both. It's deeply spiritual. Yes, very
Mm,
deeply spiritual for me, but it's also very practical. It's
mm,
on the ground level. It's learning things in a very practical sense, and then sharing that knowledge with other people. It's like mental tools. I always say that I'm like a psychological mechanic. I fix little leaks in a person's mind, and I always leave with, I just gave you a gift, because I want them to understand what just happened. When you can express a sentence or a paragraph to someone that's loaded with so much wisdom that it permanently modifies a thought pattern to improve, you just gave them a gift. You just fixed something in their psychological process, which will then impact their entire world, their entire life. So that's how I sort of illustrate it.
beautiful. Would you give some examples? You mentioned a few times initiations, which is a word that I have I guess a lot of resonance with as well. I'd love to know your understanding of what's meant by initiation, and perhaps some examples of them, because I
Mhm.
think I think there can be, without that conscious understanding of the kind of initiatory aspects of life, it can seem as though, I guess, that things should be easier. Like, oh, if this is true for me, I should just be able to do it and not recognize, like, for many things, particularly when it is about us being our truth, it will be forged within an initiation. So I'd love to know your experience and some examples of that, if you'd care to share.
Right. So there's a few terms that I use in my work. I use the term initiation. I use the term wound cycle. Of course, I always talk about spirit, because I think we're all being led by a spirit. We're all being guided in some capacity, even if it's just you, your higher self, or whatever you want to call it. I use all of these different terms. So when I talk about initiation and I talk about wound cycles, I think we are all in some sort of wound cycle, minor, major, whatever. Um, Wound cycles are here to teach you lessons so you can improve the way you think about things, the choices that you make, and the way that you relate to yourself and things around you. It's about evolution. Everything around us, life is here to evolve. So wound cycles is just simply figuring out a better way to evolve in your unique and intricate life path. So I use the term initiation, which means you are becoming initiated out of a wound cycle. So whether that wound cycle is the same type of abusive or dysfunctional relationships that a person has been in, or a wound cycle surrounding money, or a wound cycle surrounding people pleasing or social issues, or allowing people to bully them or disrespect them, and you finally decide to make a different choice to permanently end that wound cycle because you made that choice, because you changed your thought pattern in that wound cycle, you become initiated into a higher call. That means your life path naturally will go in a direction that evolves, that's better for you, that's progressive for you. And you'll never have to deal with that same wound cycle again because you see it for what it is now.
So it's like you've then moved beyond that wound cycle, and you might potentially be in a different one, but it will be a kind
Yes.
of, that really makes sense. Yeah.
With more expansion. It's always a different one, but it's like graduating one grade and you're going to a different grade. You're just
Yeah.
getting more difficult challenges, but you have more expansion over the prior challenges. So you get rewarded with a bigger yard, a bigger territory, a bigger jurisdiction, more responsibility, but you pass that wound cycle you were in prior.
Yes, a bigger field. Wonderful. That really makes sense. So I think that's a really, really powerful way to see initiations. They're almost like they're the doorway beyond that existing cycle. Would you give some examples, and it could be either personally or people you've worked with, that is an example of an initiation that takes someone beyond a cycle like that?
Right. Well, there's several things that people suffer with. I'll try to think of something that's a common issue. It could be a people pleaser issue that someone has. They're constantly trying to please everyone. They're constantly taking on more than they can handle. Um, until one day they decide, I'm going to change my thought pattern. Why am I trying to please these people? Where's this rooted to? So they figure out, oh, this is rooted in I didn't get the love that I wanted from my mother, or I didn't get the presence that or activity that I wanted from my father. So instead, when someone tries to put more on their plate, hey, Kimberly, can you take on these files and complete it by morning? They finally stand up and say, no, I have enough work. That's your responsibility. So you can either do it or you can find someone else to do it. Or they just simply say, no, I have enough load on my plate. And just no, I'm not the one that you can try that with. Find someone else to dump that burden onto, because you know what you're doing. You know that I'm nice. You know that I'm kind, and you're trying to take advantage of it. You know what I'm saying? So that's ending a wound cycle, is when you change the way you advertise yourself unconsciously to other life sources. That's an example of being initiated. So boom, you pass that. Now you're exuding an energy and an aura where people simply don't try you like that. They're not even going to attempt to dump more on your plate, because they can tell by the way you walk and the way you talk and the way you are that she's not going to go for that. That's an example of becoming initiated.
Yeah, I love what you said about the unconscious advertising. It's incredible, isn't it, how we can absolutely tell what people are available for or not.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I always say, I have this
Mm,
saying, I say the universe is always matching you to what matches you. So the
mm,
wound cycles that you're in, you will attract other people who have a wound cycle that complements yours. So you're both initiating each other. You just don't know it.
Yeah. I love that. It's so true. So true. So one of the things, and this is related to the people pleasing, but I think there's definitely more here that I'd like to explore with you, because there's you have a particularly like strong, clear voice in terms of like your expression on, say, for example, social media, where you're very much, I guess, modeling this, I'm going to speak my truth, and it's going to have the effect it's going to have, and I'm not going to be like modifying and contorting myself in order to have people like me more. That feels like a very powerful initiation, or perhaps a series of initiations that most people would need to go through to be where you are. I'd love to hear, and it could be that for you that was something that actually was quite natural, I don't know, but I'd love to hear you speak more about that particular wound cycle that I think most of us to some extent or other have been in.
Yes, that's a great question. So I would say the way that I've even reached the conclusion of like conducting myself in that way is, I think most people are just, they're in their head and they're seeing everything from their own perspective. They're insecure and they think everyone's thinking about them, talking about them, obsessed with them. And that's not true. Everyone's thinking about their own insecurities. Everyone has an insecurity. Everyone's dealing with their own stuff. They have childhood issues. They have maybe financial issues, relationship issues. People have their own things going on. No one's thinking about you for real, for real. To some capacity, maybe, but nowhere near the level that most people think they're being thought about. It's the truth. Once you understand that truth, and then once you unpack all of the different common great insecurities that people are dealing with, and you really get in their head and you see that, like, ooh, this person's dealing with that, that person's dealing with that, you just start not to care what they think about you because they have their own stuff. So it's like, even if you have a negative thought about me, even if you have a negative thought about me, you walk past the bathroom and you can smell my stuff. Well, guess what? You have stuff too. I can't smell it because you go in the back bathroom where I'm not walking there. But we all take a shit. So when you understand that, it's very difficult to care that much what another human being thinks about you or is going to conclude about you. When they're carrying their own burdens in ways that you can't see it. So why suppress, oppress, repress myself for a person who's just like me?
Wow. Yes. Yeah. The only difference is you're kind of like putting it out there, and other people may not be to the same extent, but it doesn't mean there isn't the same, as you say, the same kinds of things going on.
Right. Well, if you hear their private conversations with their best friends, that's where they say what they really think about things. You can see the controversial side of them when they're talking to their family members or their best friends, and they just lay it out there. Yeah, you know what? I really don't think this. So they have it in them. It's just people try to be polished for, which I understand that to a degree. But my point is the authenticity of that is everyone's dealing with something. They have insecurities. They're human. They get jealous sometimes. They fall sometimes. They make bad choices sometimes. Everyone's dealing with something. And the more you know that, the more you believe that, the easier it becomes to just be you.
Yeah. So would you say for you that was as kind of simple, and I appreciate these things are, they're simple but not necessarily easy. Was that a kind of, for you, a simple choice of, from now on, I'm just gonna, be myself, be authentic, speak in my own voice?
Yeah, I think it was like a process. Just, seeing the same lesson a few times in different dynamics, different situations, looking back and really analyzing what happened in that situation. And really analyzing people and things of that nature. It's like, you know what? It's like this. You can either fight your wars on your front porch, or you can fight your wars in your house. Now, when you walk on your front porch and you're just yourself, anyone who doesn't like you, they're not going to like you up front. Anyone who doesn't resonate with you, they won't resonate with you up front. Or you could be super polished and super whatever, and allow all these human beings in your house. And by that, I mean consciousness, in your world, in your social economy. That's what I mean when I say house. You can allow all these spirits and all these people who don't like the real you in your house. But then when they wander into the basement or they wander into a room and they meet a version of you that's just like, oh my God, I really don't like that. Now you have a war in your house, in your consciousness, in your social economy. That's messy. That could collapse your spirit. That could collapse your emotional and mental health because you decide to have that war in your house. It's better to have it on the front yard. Turn them off at face value on the front yard so they can just walk on by.
Wow, I love that. As a that makes it's so obvious, but the way you've expressed that is so brilliant. Yeah, it makes so much sense. But as you say, I think there's through this sense of needing to be polished and polite and, you know, potentially not create. And this is the challenging thing. It's like you can see the rationale for not having that happen out on your porch. But as you say, what you end up inviting in is something, you know, far more challenging. I think what's coming up for me is, and I think this probably goes for a lot of people, I don't particularly enjoy or feel even particularly like it's aligned for me to get kind of involved in like confrontation, you know, arguments, debates, even debates, really, quite frankly, say, for example, on social media. And that, and it's not that I would then kind of, I suppose you could say that this is where the metaphor, like, you can't take it too literally. It's not like I'm then saying, right, okay, everyone come in my house. But there's, in terms of that understanding of kind of like what's aligned for something, because if you're putting things out in your, you know, what you believe, authentic a voice, clearly there are going to be people who then are going to react to it in some way. And it's like, I'd rather just not even have the skirmish on my porch either.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. That's an excellent point. And what I say to that is, by your organizational expression, because when I say war on your front porch, what I really mean is have people not like you because they already see you for who you are. They already see that you're different, or that you have a belief that they may not understand. But you're speaking so far above their heads in your channel of consciousness that they have a war with themselves and they never even talk to you. They never even engage with you. They just look at you and they go the other way, or they walk on by, or they just they snicker with their friends. Oh, I don't like, look at it. She thinks she's all that. The wild walking, you know, whatever. And it never gets back to you. You never hear it. It never reaches your mailbox. It never comes in your house, because your authentic expression within your organizational brand or whatever, it just like a magnet repels them back. They can't even get to the front gates.
I love that so much, because you could say, well, if I'm not running a wound cycle, using your language of wanting to even be in that kind of controversy, then I'm just not advertising it anyway. You know, yes, it makes complete sense. Yeah.
It's like a kingdom or queendom. It's like a kingdom or queendom. There's a protocol to get inside the kingdom. There's guards at the gate. There's a security checkpoint. There's counsel. And you are the king or the queen of your own consciousness. So before someone gets to you, they should have to pass all of these different steps and protocols before they can even touch the gate. And it doesn't have to be like super obvious. It's just it's signaling. Everything's signaling.
Yeah, no, I really get that. Like, so much of it's just unspoken and energetic. It's just kind of like what you're actually here and available for. And something you said there that really I think is helpful is, if you're trying to prevent people even talking about you, you know, like that, as you're saying, it's like there's one thing people coming at you with their opinion versus people having an opinion but not sharing with you. If you're trying to like manage other people's view and expression about you, that's where your focus is, when actually it's none of your business, is it really? You know, like what other people say about us out there doesn't actually matter.
It does not matter. It's the general public. It's like a neighborhood. You have all these different houses. Everyone's house is their house. How Tom likes his yard is not Jerry's business, who might live next door, or Kimberly business, who might live across the street. She might like a whole bunch of flowers in her yard. No one can tell her she can't plant her flowers. So every house is in order, unless it's a stray dog or a panhandler or someone who doesn't have a house. They're just walking the neighborhood, making harsh criticisms about everyone's house, but they don't even have a house, metaphorically speaking.
Yeah. This is I just love the clarity you have on these things. It's really delightful.
It's
really
universal law. It's a pattern that you see no matter what you're looking at. You can find the pattern in everything. You know, when men or women invent things, all they're doing is mimicking God's creation. That's it. So when we talk about houses and we talk about neighborhoods and we talk about the infrastructures of a civilization or of a town or city, you can find many of these patterns in the makeup of a tree, in the makeup of a plant, in the makeup of the the galaxy system and the solar systems and things. You can find sort of little patterns between everything.
Yeah. This is just again so refreshing, and so clear. So for you in the work that you're doing, in you kind of putting your message out in the world, what's the vision behind that? Like, what is all of this in service of?
In service of life, in service of the highest interests of life on every level possible. There's many things wrong. I think everyone should have an access point to feed their natural gifts, their natural skill sets, and they should have sort of their basic needs met. Also, you know, healthy challenges along the way, but there needs to be more access points where people are able to be their full self, because we're missing out by not allowing that to happen. Someone out there has the brain and has the unique setup to cure some of the most fatal diseases that currently doesn't have a cure. Why doesn't that person have access to the tools that they need to perfect their gifts in that way? Someone out there has the invention in their mind of what it's going to take to create some sort of spaceship to get to planets that are light years away. They need the access point. So my vision is to serve life in that capacity. I try to look at it. I try to imagine a tree. You know, a tree needs air, a tree needs rain, a tree needs life in order to grow and expand. So when I think about civilization, I think about it in that same way. People need access to the source of life. They need life, whether it's education or whatever, so they can be their best self, their most gifted self. But that's going to have to be a lot of personal choices that they can make themselves. And they can't be stuck in wound cycles or stuck in poverty or stuck in, even if they're you know, making good money and they have a house and a car, but they're not doing what they love. They're not doing what they know in their heart they're supposed to be doing. So that would be sort of the big goal for me.
Oh wow, what a beautiful vision, and I can so feel your heart in that. You know how much that is where you're being guided from in that. Really beautiful. So I think we're coming up on time, and one of the things that you kind of touched on a number of times, and I'd really love to hear your take on this, is this sense of like doing what's right or living the right life. For you, how do you have this sense of kind of like what is aligned for you versus what isn't, what is right for you, what isn't right? Because I know, you know, for me years ago, I don't think I really had. Maybe I had a clear sense that what I was doing wasn't aligned, but it wasn't like I had a clear sense of like what was. It's taken me, I'd say, years to get to the place where, you know, much of the time now I have that clear sense of like, this is for me, this is aligned. But it's something I often get asked by people, you know, how do I know this is aligned? How do I know this is right for me? So I'd love to hear your sense of like, how do you know? How do you know what's right for you?
Well, for me, I don't have a lot of people in my head. And I think the more you have command over your own consciousness, you will know. You will know. You just got to get people out of your head and meditate and do your field work, like spend time with yourself, take time to really think about incidents and challenges from the past, the ones that you became initiated, even the ones that you failed, the things that hurt your feelings. Think about it. Just take some time to sit down and think to yourself, and you will know what's right for you. But you got to get people out of your head. If you have judgmental people in your head, if you have people in your head who have been mean to you, if you have people in your head that you're trying to prove something to and they don't even deserve you trying to fight for the validation, that's when you're going to be confused on how do you know what's right for you. Because you're what's right for you is being voted on by these imaginary characters in your mind that came from a real incident, but now you've created an imaginary person in your mind who has a judgment about everything you want to do. You want to go left, and well, why you want to go left? You always go left, go right. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, oh, how do I know what's right for me? Get those people out of your head, evict them out of your consciousness, and spend time with yourself, and you will know. You will know what you know that you know what you're supposed to do.
Oh my goodness. I love the way you said that so much. Just like with your first answer, like, I just don't have many people in my head. It's just so beautifully expressed. And funny enough, I was saying something earlier very similar to the co-founder of Wake and Wild, Jonathan, and I was just like, this is like one of those cliches and one of those things that you know, but every now and again you get like another deeper reminder of, like, if you're looking for the answers out there, like, you're looking in the wrong place. But it's so tempting because it's like, you know, that kind of the way the condition of the modern world is to kind of like take notice of this, take notice of this, and the direction to know what's really right is always inwards.
Always.
Yeah, but it's I think it's one of those things that we need to keep coming back to, keep reminding ourselves of. And you know, this is really ancient wisdom, you know, in a kind of more ancient setting, whether that be going off on a vision quest, you know, spending time alone, really getting clear, as you say, kind of getting those other voices out. There's all different ways of doing it, but it has to be done. It has to be done. And I think for some people, this isn't I think ironically this becomes less and less the case. Not ironically, perhaps it is just the way it is, that I think the more we have that clarity of, I can't have all these voices in here, I need to listen to like that one true voice, the less we have voices around us, like actual other human beings who have those kind of negative voices. But I think for some people, the more of the voices they have in their head, the more of the voices they have externally as well that they're taking the lead from.
Oh, it's so true. You know, I have this theory that the thoughts in your head all have a complement to a life force outside of your head in which you will meet. Even when it comes to romantic relationships, friendships, or whatever, or sometimes even life experiences, first it's a thought in your mind. And the more developed that thought becomes in your mind, positive or negative, it's going to meet the complement of that thought outside in the natural world. It attracts to you like a magnet. So think of your thoughts as little magnets, and the more developed and the more intense that thought becomes, then you meet creation, you meet the person, you meet the man or the woman in the restaurant, and you were just thinking of that energy. That energy has been festering in your mind for the past few months, and now boom, now you met them. So that's how, like, if you're thinking about a house all the time, you want to buy a house. I want to buy a house. I want to buy a house. I want to buye a house. You're going to bump into a realtor and you're like, oh my God, I wanted to buy a house. So there's something there. There's something at work there between, I believe, thoughts and life outside of you that comes to your field.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so, the thing is with this, it's so compelling when we're stuck in that kind of like being a victim to all these like inner manifestations of, as you say, often people from our past. It's so convincing that when someone externally represents that, it's like, oh yes, it was true. That is how people think of me. That is how the world works. And of course, not recognizing it's all part of that same creation.
Right. Their thought pattern is what led them to the creation of that life. See, everyone thinks there's someone out there that thinks everything about you. There's always a person who's going to think something positive, negative, midway. Now, which one are you going to meet though? The problem is people are too nosy. I'm not nosy as to people who have no alignment to me, what they think about me. They have no alignment to me. We have no business together.
Yes.
So why would I care? So there's someone who thinks something awful, terribly about me. I'm sure they just think so many negative things, but I don't get to meet them because my thought patterns only bring to me what's good to me and what's good for me and what's going to feed into my personal economy so I can feed into their personal economy as well. That's proper and that's correct.
Yes. Yes.
The alliance and the alignment of connecting with people in a way that life is circulating between you, value is circulated between you, a deal is circulated between you energetically or naturally. That's proper and correct. Constantly bumping into people who are misaligned with you, they don't like you, you don't like them, you have no business being in each other's life, you're just tearing each other down. It's like trying to vacuum clean your carpet in your house with a lawnmower, and it's like trying to mow your grass with a vacuum cleaner. You're going to break something.
I just love your analogies and metaphors. Fabulous. Oh my goodness. I've really appreciated this conversation so much. Is there anything else that you feel is important to express in terms of, again, this very powerful, clear message you have? Is there anything I've not asked you that I could have asked you that would have really been that kind of like jewel in the crown of your message?
Serve life. That would be my advice. And I think that's the answer. That's the root answer to all questions. Serve life. What does serving life mean to you as an individual is what I would ask the listener to think about. Whenever you're confused, think about yourself. What do you want to do to serve life? Because that's ultimately what everyone wants to do. They have a unique expression and way in which they want to serve life. What does that vision look like? What is that? What are you doing when you're serving life? Do the thing in which you are going to maximize your ability to serve life your way.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really glad I asked you that last question. I don't always, just to be clear, but I had a sense there was something important for you to say. So where can listeners find out more about you and all the amazing stuff you do? Where's the best place for all of that?
You can find me on Facebook. That's where I'm chilling at. My name is Eli Markus on Facebook. You spell Marcus Markus, and Eli, of course, Eli. So Eli Markus on Facebook. I am going on Patreon soon. I haven't set that up, but I'll get that set up soon. And you can also visit Alpha-Tribalism.com to take a look at my books.
And I really would recommend anyone listening that isn't already following your stuff to absolutely start, because again, you are every time I read something of yours, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, really deep, clear wisdom. So thank you so much for everything you do. Really appreciated. And yeah, again, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Eli.
I appreciate you having me. Thank you so much. And thank you all for listening. I appreciate your time being spent listening to my voice.
Thank you.